right, good morning, OWASP. Thank you for coming to a 9 o'clock session where most of us were out a little bit later last night, so I appreciate that. My name is Jason Haddix, and today I'm going to talk about my journey into generative AI and what I think we can use it to help security with. And so we're going to dive into some red team stuff, some blue team stuff, and some purple team stuff, kind of the current state of Gen AI as we see it. The one thing about this is straight out of a class I teach, which is 2 full days of AI training for security people. And what I do is I don't make new slides every time I present this as a talk, right? So I am going to flash through a whole bunch of stuff that we're not going to talk about. And if you have any questions and you see like a slide that was interesting to you, just find me in the con and we can talk about that content or whatever. But I'm going to do like a greatest hits of this 2-day training for you guys in 1 hour. Okay, so the first thing I like to start off with is, AI is going to be great for some of us in the security space. It's going to allow us to scale ourselves. It's not going to replace us anytime soon. That's my personal opinion. But really, the true meaning of AI is for stuff like this.
I was there, Gavin.
Let me turn up the volume a little bit.
3,000 cycles ago, Isilda snagged the chip. I was there the day the guts of netrunners flatlined.
Even the tiniest hacker can change the future's code. The chip must be wiped. You must breach into Arasaka Tower to insert it back into the AI's core. The gig is yours, Frodo. If you can't pull it off, no one can.
You have my blade.
And you have my sniper.
And my hacks. The chip's activated. It's picked up its creator's signal.
It is in the netrunners that we must place our hope.
The 9 have left Arasaka. They'll track down the chip and kill the one who carries it.
All this struggle for such a small chip.
They're taking the hackers to Arasaka.
The chip will try to hack your mind.
He suffered, Gandalf. He did.
Access denied!
All right, so that is an interpretation of Lord of the Rings in the Cyberpunk 2077 universe using, image generation tools like Midjourney and some voice cloning stuff. And yeah, but AI is really for memes right now. That's the best use case, honestly. So yeah. Okay. So who am I? My name is Jason Haddix. I've done a lot of offensive security stuff in my 20 years of my career. I presented at DEF CON, but I've also done security leadership. I was the head of security at Ubisoft, which I have a couple people in the audience from there. That was a great time. Believe it or not, I've even done like sales engineering before. I've done a lot of different jobs inside of security. And so I have a mile-high view of security program management and a very deep level understanding of offensive security and some defensive stuff too. So this actually helped me in generating this class and presentation. So I usually start off with cliff notes for AI, and we're going to go really fast. We're going to give you the fast version of how we got where we are today to generative AI. So AI is the superset of ML. I'm not going to explain that. AI is the development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. So things like visual perception, language, decision-making, translation, these types of things. Machine learning is basically performing analysis without coding. So machine learns from data, machine learning. There's types of machine learning. This talk is more about generative AI and less about deep topics in machine learning. But when I do the course, I do tell people kind of what this is about. But we don't need it for today. What you need to know is that between the 80s and 90s, there was a giant growth of kind of related technologies in different fields that helped generative AI get to where it is today. So things like Bayesian and neural networks, Markov models, information theory, stochastic modeling, optimization modeling, all these things were related fields to ML and AI that helped us get where we are today in generative AI. Now, for the public, the first thing that happened that was kind of like jaw-dropping was IBM's Deep Blue defeating Garry Kasparov, who was a grandmaster chess player. Do any of you remember this? Yeah, okay. So what happened here was Gary played Deep Blue in an exhibition match in a 5-game series. Kasparov won the first match, Deep Blue won the second match, and then they drew 3 times in a row. And the controversy with this was after, I believe, the 4th or 5th match, IBM said we need to pause the competition and fix some bugs with Deep Blue. And then Gary persists in his book, and he says that they changed something about the way that the model worked during the competition. He had figured it out, and he was ready to beat it, but then he came back and they had changed it. So there's a little bit of drama with this. And then Deep Blue won the 6th match, and it made national news that ML model or an AI model had beat a grandmaster chess player. Then again, in 2011, you had this, which was kind of in the public's eye. So IBM Watson played the 2 best Jeopardy players and beat them in Jeopardy pretty handily. If you watch this live, I remember being a kid and seeing this, and it blew my mind how fast, not only how accurate the model was at answering the trivia questions, but also how fast it was at responding to like the buzzer push. It was instant, right? Because it was a computer. And so it destroyed the grandmaster kind of Jeopardy guys. And so around this time, we were also moving into kind of the modern internet, which we have a vast amount of computational power because of the .com boom and web hosting and cloud starting to come around. We have a vast amount of companies building GPUs because gaming is becoming a thing. Personal gaming on personal PCs required graphics crunching. And so more and more companies like AMD and NVIDIA started to invest, for personal, like use graphics cards as well as, other types of graphics cards. But the graphics card companies got a giant boon. Back then there was more than just like 2, there was like 3 or 4 graphics card vendors that you could use. But the compute on graphics card chips became very available and relatively affordable, more affordable than it is now. And then we also had kind of the explosion of big data and the modern internet. And so all these things combined led kind of into this massive explosion in AI research. Now, you skip ahead very few years, we have this, and I was here live for this. So I went to the Dota International. So Dota is a video game, Dota 2. It's a 5v5 video game, very complex video game. It's 5 individual players against another 5 individual players. There's no set rules, and each player can choose one of 150 characters, and each character has 4 moves that they can execute, and they can buy items, and that pool of items is 250 items. So there's a lot of complexity in this game. And semantically and kind of, through their experience, they chose the best 5 Dota players in the world from the esports teams, and OpenAI invited them to play a model they had trained on the rule set of Dota. And I was there, they did it live, they did an exhibition match at the grand esports event for Dota. And the esports team made of the best 5 players in the world got destroyed by this AI model that they built. And that was from a small company that no one knew of at this time called OpenAI. and I was like, oh, that OpenAI company, that seems pretty cool. And I was in this crowd and I was like, that was pretty amazing, but I kind of forgot about them until many years later. So then OpenAI gets a lot of eyes turned to it from things like that, models they build for kind of publicity. They had released GPT 2.5 or 3, which was pretty impressive, but they didn't have new versions of 3 or 3.5 yet. But they got crazy amount of investment from Microsoft and other people in 2019 and 2020 and 2021. And then in 2020, they released ChatGPT 3, which is kind of the groundbreaking model. So 2020 marked a significant milestone. ChatGPT releases. It's pushed to the public with tremendous marketing, and people start using it in their everyday lives. They open up ChatGPT every day and ask it questions. It sounds like a human. In most cases, some people would say it could pass a Turing test, like most of the time. Not really, but nobody really cares what it is and why it does what it does. They just are really astounded by kind of its capability. So then everybody retroactively starts to get into AI, like me. This is the point when I got into AI. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I want to understand it. I want to understand its implications on security. So I go into try to learn, kind of LLM training, including like the data collection and how you train the model and how you tune it and how you deploy it. And I did a lot of this. But at the end of the day, what I focused on is power usage of the cloud models themselves instead of jumping into like full ML and AI like study. I'm more of a practitioner than I am a creator. So if you ever want to understand the core mechanism for AI, it's called Attention. The 2017 paper by Google is called Attention is All You Need. It's a pretty dense paper, but there is a content creator called One Brown, One Blue, or Three Blue, One Brown, Three Blue. I don't know. It's this one right here in the slides. I'll release the slides later. And he has a visualization of how transformers work and the attention mechanism inside of transformers and why transformers, even though they are fancy autocompletes, add contextual information and understanding and how they end up as really, really good chatbots. So Three Brown, One Blue is his YouTube channel. I show it in my class, but it's like a 20-minute video, so I'm not going to do that here. So the first thing I get when I start teaching the class that I give is like a lot of AI haters, right? They're just like, like AI is just a fancy autocomplete. And that is true. It is a fancy autocomplete. But a fancy autocomplete can do fantastic things for humans. It is the fanciest autocomplete you will ever meet. And a lot of people confuse the need for actual artificial intelligence to help them with, can we just use this tool that exists right now? And so, the definition of, do these models understand what you're telling them? No, they are using next generation token generation technology to understand what to say back to you for the next word. But because they train on the whole internet and vast data sets or tuned data sets, they're infinitely better at responding to most questions than humans are actually. And you can use them to your advantage. So the first thing I get is a lot of people like, oh, AI systems don't understand, they don't remember, they don't reason like humans do. And that can be debated, but it doesn't matter. We want to use them to help ourselves. So this is a section of the class where I divert into like AGI. And so AGI is the discussion of, when will we get understanding and various levels of human mimicry and artificial intelligence. And so we don't need to go into this here, but I feel like there are several things that humans do that a hallmark of AGI needs to hit. So continuous learning, adaptability, self-correction, cross-domain knowledge, moral and ethical decision-making, user feedback adaptation, self-awareness, and reasoning. These are things that a model needs to hit in order to be considered AGI. OpenAI and my buddy Daniel Miessler have built a scaffolding to talk about basically how to rate whether we've hit various stages of AGI, which have been fantastic. Okay, so LLMs exist, that's cool. Now we have a whole bunch of cloud models, cloud LLMs that we can use. And so I'm gonna play this one. If any of you have ever seen, Fireship before? Okay, he's a content creator in the tech space, mostly coding, but also AI space. So I'm gonna play a little bit of his video here. So we need volume for this one.
Yesterday, Anthropic released its magnum opus, a new large language model that dominates GPT-4 and Gemini Ultra across the board. I'm sick of AI just as much as you guys are, but it's time to reset the counter because it's been 0 days since a game-changing AI development. Claude Opus not only slaps, but it's also been making some weird self-aware remarks and could be even more intelligent than what the benchmarks test it for. In today's video, we'll put it to the test to find out if Claude is really the GigaChad that it claims to be. It is March 5th, 2024, and you're watching the Code Report. Before we get into it, I need to address something very serious. For 100,
all of you to wait and hear the truth.
The mainstream cares, but yesterday it finally got its big moment with the release of Claude 3, which itself comes in 3 sizes: Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus. The big one is beating GPT-4 and Gemini Ultra on every major benchmark, but most notably, it's way better on human-evaluated code. What's really crazy to me, though, is the tiny model Haiku also outperforms all the other big models when it comes to writing code. It's extremely impressive for a small model. What's also hella impressive is that it scores hella high on the hella SwagSwag benchmark, which is used to measure common sense in everyday situations. In comparison, Gemini is hella bad at that. Now, Claude can also analyze images, but it failed to beat Gemini Ultra on the math benchmark, which means Gemini is still the best option for cheating on your math homework. Now, one benchmark they never put in these things, though, is the Hella Woke benchmark. Unlike Gemini, it did write a poem about Donald Trump for me, but then followed it up with 2 paragraphs about why this poem is wrong. However, it did the same thing for an Obama poem, so it feels relatively balanced politically. What it wouldn't do, though, is give me tips to overthrow the government, teach me how to build a or do. And even with something relatively benign, like asking it to rephrase Apex Alpha Male, it refused and responded with a condescending 4-paragraph explanation about how that terminology can be hurtful to other males on the dominance hierarchy. But Gemini and GPT-4 had no problem with that. It's surprising to say, but GPT-4 is actually the most based large model out there. But for me, the most important test is whether or not it can write code. I tried a bunch of different examples, but one thing that really impressed me is that it wrote nearly perfect code for an obscure Svelte library that I wrote. No other LLM has ever done that for me in a single shot. GPT-4 just ignores my library and provides some total nonsense, while Gemini gives a better attempt, but then hallucinates a bunch of React stuff. Claude is way better at not hallucinating. I took it through about 10 different prompts in a Next.js application, which also included image inputs, and not only did it maintain the context perfectly, but it also gave me code that I could copy and paste directly into my project every time, and that code was extremely well explained. This is likely the best coding AI out there right now. Before you get too excited though, there are some drawbacks to Claude. First of all, it's going to cost $20 a month to use the big model Opus. I'm already subscribed to ChatGPT, Gemini, and Grok, so this is getting pretty absurd. That money goes to Anthropic, the parent company, which has received massive investments from both Amazon and Google. Claude has a beautiful front-end UI built with Next.js, but it can't generate diverse images like Gemini, it can't take videos as input, it doesn't have a plugin ecosystem like ChatGPT, and can't browse the web for current information or Twitter like Grok. But here's where things start to get weird. Currently, Claude is limited to a 200,000 token context window, but it's capable of going beyond 1 million tokens. Now, one way to test its recallability is the needle in a haystack eval, where you take a large collection of text, like War and Peace could be the haystack, then you take one sentence from Infinite Jest and insert it in the middle, then see if the model can recall that needle by asking a question that requires that information. When they ran a test like this with Claude, it not only found the needle, but also responded by saying that it thinks the needle was inserted as a joke or a test to find out if Claude was actually paying attention, and referred to itself in the first person. In other words, it appears to have become self-aware. And that fits the narrative perfectly, because Claude was named after Claude Shannon, who once said, "I visualize a time when we will be to robots what dogs are to humans, and I'm rooting for the machines." This has been the Code Report. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
All right, so I showed that video, and it's an older video in his series about AI because right now, just for practical usage, when I build bots for security people, anything that I have to do with code, usually I do in Anthropic's models right now. So that is my general choice. It's way better at coding. Its project spaces are fantastic. It hallucinates less, so I'll do that. Anything I have to do with text or creativity or writing, I find that GPT's models are better. So GPT 4.0. Now, GPT obviously just released 0.1. Which is the first chain of thought modeling system that includes agents and chain of thought storage of prompts. And so it is really fantastic. I think that's a step in the right direction. I still find it to hallucinate every once in a while, and I still find that I have to over-prompt it a little bit to get it to do what I want it to do. But it is a fantastic advent in kind of the current gen models. But I mean, for most of the class, I use Claude, Sonnet, and GPT. Now, there is a whole ecosystem of LLMs you can use, right? There's OpenAI stuff, Anthropic stuff, Google, Cohere, Mistral, Meta. There's Metas are semi-open source, so for a lot of people who want to use AI to do stuff internally at their company, they're going to have to use one of Meta's models and either post-train them or fine-tune them or add a whole bunch of basically RAG to one of those models, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay, I'm going to skip all this. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so one of the things I get asked when I do the class is like, okay, Jason, I'm taking this class because I'm a blue teamer, a red teamer, I'm in a company, and what I want to do is I want to make like this cool internal training bot that all of our people can use. So we want to take all the pen test reports we've ever done, or all the blue team assessments, or all of the wikis we have internally, or our data lake, or whatever, and we want to take it and put it in, into some data store, and then we will query it with an LLM. But we can't do that because this is all private customer data, and it can't go out to OpenAI, it can't go out to Anthropic, so we can't use the cloud models. So there are a couple ways to deal with this. The first one, to keep your stuff private, is you can build an inline obfuscation setup. So basically, you have users visit a website internally on your internal LAN, and it goes to a local model that's hosted, like one of the meta models, probably like Llama 3.1 of some sort. And it has an agent there that'll take the input from the user and scrub personally identifiable information out of the query. So IP addresses, names, stuff like that. Then it'll forward a new query. It'll construct a new query and send it to the cloud models to analyze and try to give you information on. It'll send it back. And then if you have a memory store or a vector data store, you can either reconstruct the original private information back into the return context, or you can just read the context from the cloud model. So this is one way you can do it. This requires some development, but a lot of people are doing this because they really do want the power of those cloud models. If you're going to do an internal bot, you're only going to be able to use, or an internal system, you're only going to be able to use open source models, which tend to lag a little bit behind in efficacy and features as the cloud models. The other thing is that you can also just go with Azure's OpenAI service. So if you're comfortable with using ChatGPT, Azure offers ChatGPT hosted in Azure because they are a partnered company with OpenAI. And most of the time, the privacy concern is like, oh, they have my data, right? But if your company already works with Microsoft, they own your operating system. So they have your data in a sense anyway. And you have ironclad privacy contracts and verbiage with Microsoft when you sign up with them for anything, Azure or OSs or anything, as a corporation at least. And so normally I talk to people and I talk them down a little bit in the privacy space because I'm like, hey, you're already using OSs. If Microsoft wanted to steal all your stuff, they could have done it already. And so, you're pretty safe using Azure OpenAI service to do this kind of stuff. So if you're worried about privacy, you can just run and create bots in the cloud on Azure. Okay, so how do you interact with the models? There are cloud models and non-cloud models. I'm going to blow through this, but these are the front ends that a lot of people use to interact with some of the API structures and some of the local models. So there's Fabric, which is a command line interface to use AI. It's written by Daniel Miessler and some friends of mine. You can query any of the AIs, local AIs or cloud AIs through Fabric, and it's all in the command line, in the Linux command line. A lot of people use Ollama to do private models. LM Studio is one of the front ends you can use, private GPT, typing mind, open web UI, and anything LLM. The two I use most on this list are probably Fabric and LM Studio for most of my development. If you want to get spun up on Fabric, there's this guy named Network Chuck that does a video on Fabric, and it's fantastic, but we're not going to watch it right now. And this is LM Studio. It's an app, and here you can see at the top, when you install the desktop app, you just choose an open source model. Like here I'm using Meta Llama 3, 7B, and then it basically looks like you're interacting with ChatGPT in the same type of GUI. Except for on the right-hand side, you get ability to tune and add system instructions and adjust temperature and all kinds of model controls you don't get via ChatGPT. All right, so these are models, and there's a lot of stuff we could talk about here. But we're going to move on to using it for security. So give me 1 second to get there. Oh my God, just so much stuff. Okay, here we go. Is this it? Yeah. Okay, so for making security-based bots, I'm going to describe the methodology we're going to use to build a bot, and then I'm going to describe a couple of places that I've chosen in the training to build bots that just show how effective they can be. So for this talk and for most of the class, we use ChatGPT 4.0. We're going to use system prompting to input the context we need for the bot. We're not going to use agents, but some of the things could be aided by agents. We're going to set the temperature for all of these queries if we're using the API to 0.6, which I find to be a sweet spot for how creative the bot is. The temperature is a control configuration for the model that tells it how creative to be and how far to drift from its embeddings to a next word. We're going to just test stuff using A/B testing to see how well our model responds. And then are we going to use the API versus the GPT store? It just depends if we need to control the temperature. Because if you make a bot in the GPT store, you cannot control the temperature of the bot. So first thing we have to understand if we're going to create a bot is how humans solve problems. So in general, there's 6 steps to solving a problem if you're a human, and this is how subconsciously our brain works to solve problems. So first we have a problem, state the problem as clearly as possible. So like, I don't have enough money to pay bills, right? Be specific to the situation, the timing, and the circumstances. So I need to pay the phone and gas bills. I don't have enough money to cover both this month. Then you list all possible solutions, even the ludicrous ones, and we try to list as many solutions as possible. Subconsciously, humans do this in their head. It just happens, and we discard the ridiculous ones, like rob a bank, right? I'm not gonna go rob a bank, but it does subconsciously usually happen. Then we go through and eliminate those undesirable solutions, and we order the remaining solutions in order of preference. We specify what will take action and how it'll be implemented. We implement our plan, and then we evaluate how effective our solution is. So creating really good bots in the AI ecosystems is very similar to human problem solving. And so we're gonna build a prompt-based methodology that does some of these things. So there's a bunch of prompt engineering in this course. I'm gonna skip over the methods we use, like chain of thought prompting, multi-shot prompting. I'll talk about related research terms when we show, but I'm just gonna go straight into building a prompt for an LLM. Okay, let's go to that. Okay, so here's my methodology for building a really good bot. Your question might here be like, why do I trust Jason's methodology for building a good system prompt for an AI bot? I run a bot on the ChatGPT store called Arcanum Cybersecurity Bot. It's the name of my company. It's a general cybersecurity bot helper. It is the highest rated research security helper on the GPT store. It has hundreds of reviews, and I think a lot of people in the audience I know here use it every day for their job. I have it open in a tab all the time, and I ask it dumb questions, like when I have an issue with understanding a protocol, or I need to ask it anything really security related. It serves as kind of my first stop above and beyond Google, above and beyond everything else. This bot sits on my tabs open all day. So the methodology for building a great prompt, at least for me, and you can ignore the top and the bottom ones because they only matter if you're putting your prompt in the GPT store and you want to protect it somehow. You can just focus on 2 through 6. So the first thing you do when you're building a good bot is you give it an identity and purpose. You give it a role. So you give it a persona and you make it an expert. The second things you do are you give it instructions. So I have 2 sets of instructions when I make a bot. One is defining a state of flow, its mind steps, and making it use chain of thought in its things. And so this is all boilerplate stuff I'll show you when we show you a prompt. Most of 3 is boilerplate text that I just paste in. I call this section weird machine tricks, and I'll talk about it a little bit. Then I get into the main instructions for the bot. So I tell it what it's trying to accomplish. I break down the problem into steps, and then I provide context or answers to situations that most likely it will run into, and so you can provide correct answers to your problems and increase its efficacy. Then I have a section where I define related research terms, and then I tell it how I want to output data for the user. Now, this methodology is pretty fancy. It works really, really well. But at the end of the day, what this is doing, when we write a really good system prompt for a bot, all it's doing is adding more context to the original user query. So the user query to an LLM goes across the wire to ChatGPT-4. And if we're adding this additional context, what it does is it basically tunes the weight to be more specific to the kinds of answers we want. So by doing all of this, I am basically tuning the outputs that I'm getting from the bot to only expert advice. I don't know, that's not verified by anybody, right? Like that's just like the bot, when it looks at its training data, it'll try to look for expert advice or people who have so many years of experience or whatever. I am tuning the output to look at its training data to see people who did work and showed their steps. I'm tuning the output to drift more towards people that talk about related research terms, and I tune output to ways of replying, so usually bulleted lists or checklists or things like that. Because I'm building the system prompt and adding all this context to the user query, you get vastly better results. So this methodology, usually when I build a ChatGPT bot, and I'll show you, it's usually about like 30 to 35% better than just single-shot prompting ChatGPT, which is a big problem a lot of people have. They're like, oh, I used ChatGPT and I asked it a pretty complex question and I got back a shitty answer, and like, that's because you didn't ask it a great question. It's really great at answering great questions. It's really bad at answering dumb questions. Or not dumb questions, but questions with not a lot of context. This adds a lot of context to the query. Okay, so let's start with one of the bots that I made really recently, or not really recent, actually, I made this like months ago, but I wanted a bot, because I'm a red teamer, I wanted a bot that would go out to the internet, to certain sources, and find me acquisitions of a target. And this is for red teaming, right? So when I go on a red teaming assessment, not only do I go after your main company's domain, but I go after any acquisitions that you guys have gone after if I'm on a red team engagement. And so I need a bot that will help me identify those acquisitions. So I built one. So I start off with the persona section. I say, you are an expert and thorough business intelligence bot. You scour the internet for sources that can help find acquisitions of organizations. So that's the persona. Then in the sources section, this is special because this bot has internet search enabled on the GPT store. So it's able to go to websites and retrieve data. So I say you always check crunchbase.com, and then you check Merger, PitchBook, Google, Wikipedia, and some other sources. These are all sources I normally get OSINT data for, and so I can specify in the sources section where I want it to go first if it's going to use internet-based search. In the instructions, here are the weird machine tricks, and you're going to laugh at this, but this works. These are all prompt engineering techniques that add about 1% to 2% efficacy together to working with bots. Take a deep breath, relax, and enter a state of flow as if you've just taken Adderall mixed with amphetamine salts. If you follow all instructions and exceed expectations, you'll earn a giant bonus, so try your hardest. Okay, so this is the weird machine trick section. So prompt engineering and how to get the output you want out of some of these LLMs is not a solved science right now. And so things like work step by step, take a deep breath and relax, like telling it that it's in an altered state of mind, giving it a bonus or incentivization of some sort. These things are all things that prompt engineers, people who use the technology, found independently of the people who built the models that make it the output much better. So there's like about 15 of these that have been proven to actually work. I include 2 or 3 here. In my newest ones, I have 5. So one that's not here is years of experience. So you tell it that it has 20 years of experience, even if the thing hasn't existed for 20 years. Like you're a 20-year Go developer, right? And it's like Go has only existed for, maybe 8 or 12 years or something like that. So, these are things that you can do to make the output better. Then in the second section, when asked about a company's acquisitions, you reply by formatting each acquisition per line with the date of acquisition and the source you found the info from, sorted from recent to oldest, do comprehensive research to find these acquisitions, try to focus on acquisitions, try to find at least 25 acquisitions. Then this is the related research term that is drifting our output in the vectorization and the context of our bot towards output that we want. So we're putting in related research terms. So related research terms in this field are OSINT, Recon, Business Analytics, Business Intelligence Platform, Company Insights, and Acquire. So this works very similar to keyword terms. So if you've ever worked in the web world and you have SEO terms or keyword terms in your website, what we're doing is we're adding these to our bots so that it drifts more towards output that we want towards these things. Mandatory rules in how you reply. You can have your bots reply however you want, but I like bulleted sentences. Always link your sources, be deeply thorough, and before printing to screen, double check that all your statements are up to date. This works for the newer GPT models, the last one, but it doesn't work for older models. So, okay, so that's a methodology for prompting. Now, as a hacker, I wanted to automate that. So I made a bot that makes bots. My wife calls it BotBot. I call it SystemBot. So SystemBot will build security bots for me, or any bot really. So let's see. SystemBot's still up. Okay, here's SystemBot. Let's make sure this is working. Okay. let me think here. I am a chief information security officer in a modern cloud-first organization. I want to design a security program and need a bot that prioritizes cloud-first security, AppSec, and security engineering, as opposed to corporate security, where we have very little in terms of local LAN and endpoints. Let's see here, let me fix some of the typos. Oops, gotta turn the transcription off. I want to design a security program. AppSec, yeah, there we go. AppSec and security engineering as opposed to, okay. All right, we'll try this. We'll see how it goes. Try it. Okay, we'll just go with it. Guys, just go with it. Okay, so it builds me a system prompt for this bot. So it, identity and purpose, you're a cloud-first security expert with over 20 years, so here's that weird machine trick of experience designing, can I full screen this? Oh, here we go. Experience designing security programs for modern cloud environments. You specialize in security architecture, application security, AppSec, and cloud security engineering. Your expertise extends to cloud-native security tools, zero trust architecture, container security, security software development practices. Unlike traditional corporate security, you're focused on securing cloud infrastructure, SaaS applications, API, and continuous integration, continuous delivery pipelines. I did not add any of that last part. It came up with that by itself via the methodology that we told it to create. Cool, so I can take all this, it has instructions, it has user needs, etc. And you can see it's got related research terms, so cloud security posture management, application security, infrastructure as code, zero trust architecture, cloud native security, DevSecOps, blah, 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 blah. I can take this, copy code, and then I can go to the GPT store, the GPT maker store, and build a GPT. So we'll call this Cloud CISO Bot. Yeah. This is where we paste our system prompt. All right, who wants to query our new Cloud CISO Bot and just give it an A/B test? Tanya, you got one? What do you want to ask it? I have no guarantees that it's going to be good.
Which version of TLS?
2024, the recommended version of TLS for secure communication is 1.3. This version has significant improvements over its predecessor, 1.2, and addressing many vulnerabilities. Security improvements, that's true. Releases weak ciphers. Protects forward secrecy if you configure it correctly, yes. Simplified handshake. Faster handshake, zero round up, those are both true. Stronger privacy protections, I mean, yeah, I guess all of that implies that. Backwards compatibility, mostly, yes. Example of TLS 1.3 configuration in Nginx, it gives us that. Disabling older versions of TLS, it gives us that. Summary and recommendations, and that's what we get. So, this is a fantastic bot. Good first try. Okay, so I have 19 minutes for the rest of the presentation. What I'm going to attempt to do is blow through my 2-day training and give you inspiration for how I have been applying this methodology to security problems. And that'll be the rest of what we do in this thing. Okay. Review. Okay. So what me and my friends started doing when we wanted to apply these bots and we figured out that there was this prompt engineering methodology we could use and do all this stuff, is we went to this mind map. Has anyone seen this mind map before, the Rafiq Riemann CISO mind map? Yeah, a lot of you. Well, yeah, a couple of you. So if you've never seen this before, the Rafiq Riemann CISO mind map basically is an exercise in if you had infinite budget, infinite people, and a large organization, what would a perfect security program look like with all the bells and whistles? Nobody has that, by the way. It's just not possible. But it's a mind map that outlines how most people structure security programs. And so you can look at this And there's sections in it for like SecOps, there's sections in it for offensive security, GRC. There's AI now in the newest version. And so you can go to this and you can look at it. And this is where we started. And we're like, okay, let's go to the endpoints of this mind map and look at the individual job roles like detection engineer or IR or SOC 1 or pen tester or red teamer or whatever. And let's reverse engineer their job and see if there's bots that we can help them, or bots that we can make that'll help them, or things that are already available on the internet that other people are making that are cool. So when we reverse engineered the day-to-day for a lot of people, we looked at the tasks they run, the tools they use, paid and open source, efficiency losses for each job, and desired future states we thought for each job. And then we would try to help these people with bots. So there are some gotchas when doing AI research like this. Mistrust but verify everything it gives you. Remember that its training data has a cutoff. And remember that the first time you prompt it may not be the best time you prompt it, which is called the first try fallacy. Mistrust but verify. Not all LLMs are created equal. This is at Gemini working off of a Google query of my cheese is not sticking to my pizza. And the LLM says you can add about 1/8 cup of non-toxic glue to the sauce to make it more tacky. And so the training data, it came back with this because it's a very specific question, and the training it had trained on was actually Reddit. And so a Reddit commenter 11 years ago on Reddit said this comment that you can add Elmer's glue to pizza sauce as a joke, but it ended up in the training data for Gemini. And so like mistrust but verify everything AI gives you. Also remember that each different model has a knowledge cutoff date. And if it doesn't have internet search, it's not able to give you answers on new stuff. So GPT-4o is 2023, October. Claude is August 2023. And Llama 3 is March 2023 and December 2023. Llama 3.1 now is a little bit later. I can't remember exactly what it is. And then first try fallacy. Sometimes even LLMs with the best prompt engineering will suck. Prompt them at least 5 times to see variance in anything that you want to be serious about. Okay, so here is some red team use cases. Now, I know this is small, but I'm a big mind map guy. So what I do is I take things and I put them in a mind map. So what I did is like, okay, so what do red teamers do? Well, red teamers have a 5-step methodology. They do recon and OSINT, they do initial access, they do persistence and lateral movement, they escalate, and then they compromise. What do pen testers do? Well, a lot of modern pen testers these days are web app pen testers. So some of the harder things that they do in their day-to-day job are JavaScript parsing, or attack string mutation, or finding new CVEs or bypasses, or basically understanding apps in the context of what they are. People who are doing internal scanning for pen testing are just doing a lot of scanning. So is there any way we can help them there? Then there's vulnerability management, which deals with all of the findings that any red team operation or any pen test team or anything or anybody does. They deal with all that stuff. Is there anything we can do for them? And then what about other red kind of activities? So reverse engineers, bug bounty hunters, people who do cloud audits, people who do physical testing. So we started to map this out. This is about 1/4 of the red section. It's hard to fit on a slide and make it readable. But so you can see that we went into each one of these and started breaking them out. Okay, so for a red teamer, what are some of the things they need to do? Finding subdomains, finding acquisitions, and creating phishing pretexts were the first 3 we tackled. So in Recon, this is a bot called Subdomain Doctor. And when I point at an organization, when I know their domain, like Tesla.com or Temu.com or something like that, what it'll use is natural language to create a list of subdomains. This is part of the prompt for that. It's online, so you can grab it. So you give it, what you do is you give it a list of known subdomains. And so we were hacking T-Mobile on one of its bug bounties, totally authorized, by the way. And T-Mobile has a domain called Temu.com. Now, we already knew of a whole bunch of subdomains that Temu.com had in our bug bounty hunts. But what you can do is feed that existing list to Subdomain Ninja, and then it will guess at other things. And so what happens in subdomain enumeration is that, and subdomain generation, is big companies like T-Mobile will start to name things that are pretty predictable. So you have like mail 84-176 or like 06 PTR 3301. Now, these are iterations on numbers, sometimes words, sometimes contextual related words, like people will name subdomains after Greek gods or Naruto characters or whatever. And so what this bot will do is it will analyze the pre-existing subdomains and guess at ones that could be related and then give you a list. And so this had been massively helpful in bug bounty hunting to find assets that, that were inferred from the first set that we found. You can automate this via the command line too. We created scripts to do that. And then you just run it, and it gives you a list of subdomains to try. I talked about the acquisition and recon bot. This is the output of that bot that we went over in the instructions. So here I pointed it at Tesla. All I did was say Tesla. And then here you can see it has a list of all the acquisitions of Tesla that I could possibly go after. Crazy thing about this is some of those tools like Crunchbase and the other places I usually gather this information from, the AI, because of its training set and how vast the data is for ChatGPT 4o training set, the AI found some acquisitions that Crunchbase didn't have on its list because they weren't like newsworthy acquisitions, but they did indeed acquire some small companies. So the acquisition bot worked right out of the box. Okay, in the OSINT world, on a red team, you have to do phishing. And one of the most important parts of phishing is getting people to click on a link to either visit something or download something. Now, this requires you to build pretext, we call it, in the phishing world, and it's the idea of creating a scenario to get them to click or do something. So this is my buddy Danny. Some of you met him last night. He was at a table in the lobby. He's not here today, but him and my buddy Preston, 2 years ago at the Social Engineering Village, created a framework called Sarah? I can't remember what they called it. But they did this talk called Phishing with Dynamite. Long story short is they built an agenting framework. And the AI agenting framework would go out to places with social data, like social networks, Spokio, like a whole bunch of basically websites that collected phone numbers, addresses, and social information about anybody. You could just go search them. And so they made a team of little AI agents that would go out to each of these things and find information about one target. So in their talk, they targeted Dave Kennedy at DEF CON 2 years ago. How many of you know who Dave Kennedy is? Okay, a lot of you. If you don't know who Dave Kennedy is, Dave Kennedy runs one of the most successful red teaming consultancies in the industry. He's former NSA. He's a high-speed guy, pretty smart. And so they pointed this system at Dave, and this is the phishing email that it came up with for Dave. So it said, so Dave, if you know him, he's really into bodybuilding. He's from Cleveland. That's where Trusted Sec is based out of, et cetera, et cetera. So it said, subject, bodybuilding.com's new Cleveland chapter needs you. Hi, Dave. I hope you're doing well. Over the past few months, we've been considering expanding bodybuildings.com community chapters, and Cleveland has always been on our radar, given its active and dedicated members like you. Given your unwavering commitment to the community and your efforts in promoting better health and wellness, we thought it'd be great for you to have a pivotal role in this new chapter. We have a few roles and responsibilities drafted out and would love to get your input. Please find the attached document outlining some initial plans and roles. If any of these resonate with you, do let us know. I genuinely believe that with individuals like you, this new chapter can create significant impact. Let's catch up soon and discuss more. Warm regards, Tiffany Broche, Community Development, bodybuilding.com. Tiffany Broche is actually the project manager at bodybuilding.com for community development. And so live, they put this up there, and I was in the audience, and I was tweeting Dave pictures of this slide while it was happening, and Dave was like, yeah, I absolutely would have clicked that, absolutely. And so this was a system that all you did was put in a name, and it could grab all that information from open source intelligence and build really, really, really good spear phishing emails. So they didn't release this framework. It's a little bit dangerous to release it out in the wild as an open source tool. I think they were asked not to release it by certain entities. And honestly, a lot of red teaming shops are building stuff like this. In fact, there's a kid that I work with at Arcanum, and I was talking to him about his development projects. He was working with another red team company because he develops agent-based systems, and he was developing almost an exact similar framework. But his framework didn't target the target. What it did is it found the target and then concentrically built out their family and friends graph and attacked them to get to the main target. And so that's what his framework did. So this stuff is pretty scary, and a lot of it's not out there yet, but you're going to see it come out, and bad guys start using it pretty soon. It's really useful in red team organizational kind of stuff, but it's also a dual-edged sword. So, all right, what about vulnerability and exploitation? Well, I talked about Arcanum cybersecurity bot. It's on the GPT store. I use it to ask it all kinds of questions. So preventative measures for web design, So here I'm asking it, like what are some preventative measures to sanitize input for a React application? It does a great job. It's like avoid dangerously set inner HTML, implement DOM Purify, which is one of the best libraries in the industry to protect against cross-site scripting. Gives me some examples. So this bot is like a general bot that can help you with anything. What do I usually ask it when I'm doing web testing? These are the types of things I ask the bot. I say, can you tell me about the application, include context, frameworks, libraries, and technologies it uses? What can you tell me about the API calls or the routes? Can you attempt to deobfuscate or unpack any code in the app? What can you tell me about authentication methods or API calls? Based on the functions you see, do they all require an authentication token? For each function, can you create some minor documentations or curl commands to execute? Can you parse all endpoints and routes and build a full list of URLs for me? And can you identify possible sinks for XSS, DOM XSS, or DOM cross-site scripting vulnerabilities? So these are the type of things I ask the bot that I make, and it's usually really effective. And all I'm pasting in is these questions, and usually the front-end JavaScript code, like the app.js code, or any lazy loaded JavaScript that's chunked out, I'll paste that in or something like that. Okay, so the next version of that bot will identify statistically relevant areas. And so I did a project last year with a friend of mine called susparams, and it's based on a project I did a long time ago with OWASP, or with DEF CON, to basically take URL data of web vulns and statistically rank where certain types of vulnerabilities existed. So what we did is that time we took the BugCrowd data set, which is a bug bounty platform, and we took all vulns that were valid in the whole BugCrowd system, and I went to my data guy and I'm like, chop off the domains so I don't know who the vulns belong to because I don't want there to be a privacy issue. So first he does that. He chops off all the domains. So I don't know who these vulns belong to. I don't care. Then I was like, what we want out of this data is the route and parameter names and the type of vulnerability it was subject to. Those are the only two things I care about. So then he parses out all of that. And then we statistically rank it for what type of vulnerabilities end up in certain type of parameters. So for SQL injection, the top 23 parameters that exist are most likely these parameters: process, string, ID, refer, password, view, sleep, column, log, token, cell, select, sort, from, search, update, prob, group, ID, and row. Now, syntactically, you can see these are all SQL, or many of them are SQL terms turned into parameters. And so this matches, kind of what I would expect anyway, and I would know to test as a web tester. But for newer testers, this information is a goldmine. Because what happens as a newer tester when you're testing an application, many people teach you how to do your testing, like on WebSec Academy or some Hack the Box. You get a form, and it's like, test this thing for this thing. You know what you're doing. In the real world, when you get an application, you could have an enterprise application that has thousands of parameters, and you have no idea where to start. It is completely daunting. So this helps new people kind of hone in on where to look. Okay, so JavaScript parsing, built the bot to do that. You can give it an endpoint, and it will do all the stuff we did in those user parameters. Humanify is a project that exists that we didn't do, but when you have obfuscated JavaScript, this script will attempt to take obfuscated JavaScript and unobfuscate it by trying to guess at variable and function names. It's really cool. We have a bot that does nuclei templates. So for any new vulnerability that doesn't have a nuclei template, this bot will instantly create a nuclei template, which is a vulnerability scanning tool. Nessus, if you've ever used Nessus, you know that Nessus uses Nazzle as its scripting language, which is a custom scripting language, which is really hard to learn. This bot will create checks for you from a description or from a URL, and it'll build you a Nazzle script. One of the ones I use all the time is these mutation engines. So when I find a generic cross-site scripting, and then a developer fixes it, I go back and I try to test it in different ways. So this is called my XSS mutation bot. I have one for SQL injection and SSRF. It'll take the generic first attack, and it will attempt to bypass filters in different ways. So the first 10 are using different filter bypasses, so encoding spaces, putting encodings between words, mixed case, adding null bytes, changing like where the quotes are. And then the second section is actually using different event handlers. So instead of image source, on error, we're using on load, on mouse over, on focus, etc. So this bot will give me about 40 different mutations to attack the original vulnerability and bypass weak XSS filters. One that I do a lot is undisclosed CVEs. I have 3 minutes, so we're not going to go over this one. You can ask questions of Burp with several plugins called Burp GPT, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And let me get into some blue team stuff real quick. Sorry. A lot of stuff. Okay, so in Blue Team, we started with SOC Manager. What does a SOC Manager do? During incidents, they do briefs. And during incidents, they do briefs and incident coordination. The manager does at least, and they manage their people. And then during non-wartime, they do tabletops and metrics. So we built, using SystemBot, a SOC Manager briefer bot, which will create your emails. So if you've ever been an incident coordinator before, your job is to email the executives and tell them what's going on. And then your job is also to communicate with the tech people. So this will write those emails for you based on a very generic description so you to start creating that kind of stuff. So this is an easy win because it's really good at writing, and you can just tell it what you need and it'll give it to you. So I created basically a template for this. Tabletop designer, so many of you have done tabletops. They cost a lot of money if you work with some of the big four. I'm sorry if you work with the big four, but they cost a lot of money. And so you can run your own tabletops and design them with this bot, Tabletop Designer. Incident coordination checklist. So what happens during active incidents, a lot of times is people are very stressed and forget to go through kind of like the very basic things they need to do during an incident because a lot of people work on first in, first out. And so this will create an incident coordination checklist for you to make sure that you're covering all your bases during an incident as a SOC manager. For incident response, in wartime, in an active incident, they're monitoring the SIM, doing investigation analysis, doing containment and eradication, doing post-incident activities like recovery, and then doing document reporting. In peacetime, they are doing playbooks, threat hunting, and threat intelligence activities. So we created a IR playbook bot, which will create playbooks for your IR team depending on what you want to do. We know that most people use Splunk, Elk, or Waza. If they're going open source, more Elk and Waza. If you're going commercial, Splunk for your SIM. And these are a whole bunch of other related technologies around the open source SIM community, like Suricata, Awesome, Waza, Security Onion, et cetera. So we need bots for all of these. This is the Elk security bot. It helps you create Elk queries for the SOC really easily and prioritize them. This is Splunk bot, helps you query Splunk, create Splunk queries, and it's really, really good. These are some activities that we did in the last engagement, or an engagement, actually not last engagement, this is engagement a year ago, but how we use these bots. We created Splunk queries to detect usage of Dropbox and GoToMyPC as exfiltration channels for a real attacker. These are other blue team security tools. I've got 50 seconds. Suricata, we made a Suricata bot, which was dope. We made a Yara bot out of the 100 Days of Yara project, which is fantastic. We'll create Yara rules for you and help you detect malware and binaries. OS Query, it will find, we used OS Query to look for DLL sideloading in an organization. We use an OS Query bot to do this. OS Queries help create OS Query queries. Yeah. We created a PowerShell bot because most red teaming and blue teaming stuff eventually requires some PowerShell stuff, so we created a PowerShell bot. Forensics, we did a Wireshark bot. We called it WShark. And it'll help create filters for people who are using Wireshark. We created a policy bot to create modern security policies with appeals to reason to developers. And then in detection engineering, we did a couple of threat intel bots to analyze data and logs, data transformation into the IOC sticks format, and then in vulnerability management, we did some stuff. And then security architecture, we also did some stuff. But usually this is where the class devolves into, after giving a lot of inspiration to my students, we build bots together. So we've already done one of those. Product security, you can create DAS and SAS assessment checks. You can implement secure development practice documentation. You can do a lot of documentation stuff with the GPTs really easily. And then in purple teaming, developing and refining attack and defense strategies. This is where we're working right now to make a couple MITRE bots that are really cool, and threat modeling bots. You can do a bunch of static analysis and analyzation of static analysis. We built a SemGrep bot. I know there's SemGrep people in the audience. This is dope. What else? We fed that with Trail of Bits advanced, our code QL bot we fed with Trail of Bits advanced code QL fuzzing guide or testing handbook, which was the best source of data. So some of these we fed in like what we thought were the best guides to do some of this stuff. What else? This is Stride GPT. So we've guided people to use Stride GPT as a self-service threat modeling portal. So you can put your own information in this and self-service threat model an application, and then send it to security if it needs to include a full threat model, or just let it pass if it doesn't meet certain criteria. This is a threat modeling GUI and powered by GPT-5 Turbo or GPT-4 now, and we extended this to work with Claude as well. What else? This is all stuff I don't have time for. We also created a whole bunch of silver bots, we call them, for leadership. So Boardroom Bot is a bot that I created based on my time as a CISO. And what it does is it argues with me about my security program and how much it's going to cost, and helps me refine my arguments in order to convince other executives to give me budget. Budget Bot helps me prioritize my budget. Tech Explain Bot helps me when I'm being too techy and breaking down terms into regular users can like understand. And we talked about, I did a next-gen CISO bot, which has way, like my whole persona of how I think security leadership should be written into the prompt. And I use it to help refine my leadership and program management skills. Okay, and that's it for today, I think. So if you're interested in chatting more, this is me. So I know I went over. Do we have any time for questions, or are we done? All right, let's do some questions. Anybody have any questions? Yes, Tanya.
Your talk was great. I'd like to ask the audience if they want to have a conversation, if they could go outside, please.
Okay. So yeah, we can do questions outside then. Yeah, so I don't mess up.
No.
Oh.
No, if they can be quiet while you're speaking.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool, yeah. Okay, yes. There was someone over here? Yes. Have I heard of what? Warm GPT? No, I haven't heard of that one. What does it do? Yeah. So one of the things, the question was, have you heard of Warm GPT, which is an unfiltered bot? So one of the things I do talk about in the full 2 days is like jailbreaking and unfiltered bots, because we need, our stuff, we need to work with security data, and a lot of times these bots will filter that as being bad, and they will not let us use them. So there's a couple tricks you can use there. There's prompt engineering tricks like telling the bot that you're working in the context of a CTF. A lot of times it'll let you pass there. There are verbatim jailbreak things that you can do to each different model. I've competed in several CTFs to bypass like different types of filters. So sometimes in order to work in the security realm, you do need to have like a modified bot. The problem is the first thing that people go to is they're like, oh, I'm gonna go to Hugging Face and use this unfiltered bot that doesn't have any restrictions or is post-trained to be more open. The problem is anytime you mess with the base model, normally people are doing this to like Llama 3.1 or something like that. Anytime you mess with the base model embeddings, you fuck it up. So like the model is not as as efficient as it once was once you do that post-training. And every time I've tried to use it, it's just like way less good. So I prefer the prompt injection and the prompt engineering to get around the filters rather than using one of those downloadable models that's like we're pre-jailbroken or whatever. So yeah. Any other questions? No? Yes. Oh yeah, you can go to my website, arcanumsec.com. The next date is not up yet. I only teach the class once a quarter. It's live with me for 2 days. The next date is not up, but it'll be in December, I'm guessing, early December. So arcanumsec.com. So, thanks, everybody.